And here we are. I'm with Chris Radvansky of Rad Consultants. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Ian. Good to see your face again, sir.
Yeah, good to see you too. And we're going to be talking later in the year about inverting the hiring pyramid and all the exciting things that are happening in the industry. And obviously, Chris, from your perspective, I'm going to be asking you a few questions around the data side of that, because I know that that's your area of interest. But for our guests on this call, could you just give me a quick summary about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Ian, thank you for bringing me in here. So I'm Chris Radvansky. People call me Chris Rad. I am the owner and founder of Rad Consultants. And what Rad Consultants is really a analytics platform for focus within the workforce. So whether it's full-time employees, contingent workers, SOW activity, all of that volume that's coming through some of these global companies, some of these companies involved in clinical, commercial, light industrial, really you name it. There's a hell of a lot of data coming in and out on a daily basis, whether it's timesheets, candidates, you name it, active workers, suppliers, etc. And so what we want to do is we want to give the insights based upon all that activity to the folks that are making the decisions within the program, saying, all right, who's being a strong partner, who's delivering quality, how much volume do we have coming through? So all that kinds of questions that folks might have that don't really get good answers right now, that's where we're partnering with them to deliver some really strong business intelligence so they can make better decisions.
And Chris, why can't they do it already?
Well, the systems that they use right now, and hopefully they do use a system, there's a lot of folks out there that are still on Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets, etc. However, most of them that have anything that is relevant volume will be using a VMS, a vendor management system within the contingent labor space. They use an HRIS that contains all of their FTE information. Also, staffing suppliers, they use ATS, as Applicant Tracking Systems, that say, all right, here's the candidates, here's the open roles, and here's how we're working on it. So those systems are really great at consolidating all that information, having a go-to spot to have those transactions play out. They're not as strong, based upon my experience and also feedback I've heard from folks in the space. They're not as strong, giving really strong insights. They'll all have some level of a dashboard where you get your pie charts and your bar charts, and you can say, okay, you can click on that, and it'll show you some analytics. Most of the folks that I hear from, they'll say, well, yeah, they're there, but they're not really scratching the itch. They're not answering the questions that I have on a given day or a given week. And therefore, they're relegated to the raw data Excel extracts from these systems. And then they deal with Excel. And being HR folks, a lot of them, they want to deal with individuals. They want to put butts in seats, as we say. So they don't want to parse through all these rows and columns. So there needs to be the kind of that happy medium, that flexible, where it's not a software that delivers the same solution to 600 customers. And it's not, hey, HR person, build something you can use on a go-forward basis that would be relevant. That's not what they want to do. And therefore, that's what we're saying, hey, we'll go ahead and do that for you.
And Chris, for a lot of the companies you're talking to, what is the jump-off point, please, from where they are today? I mean, are they already running programs and they're just having problems with this kind of welding of data together? Or are they like first gen, they've not got a program in place yet? And what is the situation generally that you're dealing with?
Yeah, it's column A and column B, really, Ian. I think that there is a hell of a lot of education and growth that can be done within the total talent management space. I've had clients that are running on spreadsheets, and I say, okay, what are our current states? What can we do to improve? And how can I recommend a good VMS or a good ATS for you going forward? If that's your state, I want to help you out in your current state. Then there's also these second, third, fifth gen programs that maybe they had an MSP. They said, you know what, we squeezed that lemon as much as we could for the last 15 years, and therefore we're going to do an in-house contingent labor program. We're going to sit within HR or within procurement and make sure that we can accomplish the goals, whether it's a full-time employee, it's a contingent worker, whatever goals we've set November, December of last year, I want to make sure we can achieve those and check those boxes here in December. And then all of a sudden, okay, well, have we done that with an FTE, with a contingent worker? So there's big scope and spectrum of maturity within this space. Totally no systems at all, just putting Band-Aids all over the place. And then something, okay, we've already gone through a hell of a progression for the last however many years. and therefore we need to keep the lights on, but we also still want to figure out how can we get cost savings, how can we get efficiencies out of this.
I guess for some customers, they're going to be thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm paying for an MSP. I'm paying for somebody to actually manage this process for me. Shouldn't they be doing this? Why haven't I already got my data?
Well, Ian, there's a lot of shoulds in the world here. And really, who should be doing it? Shouldn't it be, well, the data, if I'm talking about data all the time, right? People are tired of hearing Rad Consultants talking about data, but the data is housed in the VMS. So, right. Well, the MSP is the people. Like I said, they're putting the butts in the seats. But the VMS is like, listen, we got enough to worry about. We got compliance, we got finance, we got extensions, we got all these different functionalities that exist within this ecosystem that we need to deal with. And if any of those fall off the track, the whole program falls off the track. And so therefore they focus on those keeping the lights on types of transactional functions within their software.
Yeah.
So both sides, the MSP and the VMS within the contingent labor space, they'll point at each other and say, well, that should come from them, that should come from them. And we're tired of hearing that. So those shoulds, okay, well, start pointing the finger at Rad Consultants here, and we'll check that box for you.
And I guess one of the challenges that anybody is going to face as an HR leader or a procurement leader in this space when they're looking at this stuff is there are so many bits of information they potentially could get, and yet they know that they've got to bring all this together and make sense of it and set priorities on what information is most important to them. And it seems like a huge, sort of gestation period between when they start this route and when they actually start to see deliverable results. What are your perspectives on that pain of transition?
I think that it's a prioritization issue. It's a operating very, very lean type of a situation. It's also very personal. When you talk about these workers, whether again full-time or contingent, all of them do require some level of white glove service. We've got to make sure that we are delivering exactly what they need. This person that hasn't gotten paid in 4 weeks, that's a problem that needs to be dealt with a human's eyes. And that's kind of a problem, is taking them away from more of the strategic things. Yeah. One thing I'll bring up with folks is there are things that are important, there's things that are urgent, and that can kind of exist in a quadrant type of a view. Yeah. And the things that are both urgent and important, they're taken care of. Getting somebody paid that hasn't been paid in 4 weeks, that better get fixed, and it better get fixed right away, and it's very important. Those things that are important, but maybe not urgent, are the things that are put in the back burner. They're the things that are deprioritized. And I would say that's the case a lot of times when it comes to analytics.
And how do you accelerate that kind of time it takes to start to see results, Chris, in your approach?
You need to have a partner that knows that very specific niche thing. Yeah. And when I tell people that, I'm involved in contingent workforce analytics or workforce analytics, people analytics, they'll say, well, why would you focus on such a finite area? It's because the contingent workforce industry is growing. It's a little bit slow these days, but overall, companies want to say, how can I have fewer full-time employees, and how can I have a more flexible and dynamic workforce? I want to engage with skills on a just-in-time type of a basis. And that's what really the contingent workforce will enable companies to do. So for me, it's that hyper-specialization I think is going to be critical, not just for me and not just for other independent consultants within this space, but really globally. What do we need? How can we get away with a method that will get us what we need at as little cost as possible? You might pay a little bit more for a 4-week, 6-week engagement, but you're not going to have that person on full time for the 52 weeks of the year. You're not going to have PTO and all those different kinds of things that come with the overhead. So I think it's a growing world, but it's a world that still a lot of folks need an education on.
So what we're seeing from the conference floor this year, Chris, is a lot of companies looking at direct sourcing and this inversion of the hiring pyramid, so they can actually attract the talent first. And then build it into curated talent pools. And then when they need the talent, they hopefully will find it there. What is your perspective on the role of data to drive these strategies and these transitions in strategy?
Yeah, it's interesting because you do, within the direct sourcing conversation, we are talking a heck of a lot about building the brand and brand awareness, and listen, leverage your brand to attract people so that when you do have an open need and an open role, they're going to just be already within that pool. And that pool is individuals, it's people, it's self-identified skill sets, and maybe it's, hey, listen, they went through XYZ technical testing, and therefore we know as for a fact that they are ready to go. And that would be a data point. Hey, which certifications do they have? That's a data point. Which technical tests have they gone through? That's a data point. Have they worked with us before? Have they worked with a competitor before? Have they worked in this industry before? All that is data points. So it's great to build that pool of talent and that pool of people. I don't want to make it not personal. This is all work. It's all people supporting their families. And to call it a talent pool sounds rather impersonal. However, I recognize that this is all a human resource type of a question, so literally human, but it does come down to data as well. So if you can augment that feel for humanity and for people and connections with data that will help you make better decisions, that's exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, understood. And to what extent do you think artificial intelligence is going to play a role in this in terms of use of data, the capturing of data? How much role do you see AI is going to be playing in all this?
The hype that is kind of a little bit dying down at this point, just because people say, well, what have you done for me lately, AI, right? And how are we going to keep the lights on, literally? Energy is a huge problem. They're talking about going to Canada and partnering with data centers up there and the whole thing. So I try to keep on top of all the developments within AI. It's constant. The thing is, whatever large language model, small language model, whatever type of model you're going to be dealing with, it's going to be trained on a data set. And that could be structured or unstructured data. So you think about it, okay, within the HR space, a lot of companies will admittedly say, listen, our data's not great. It's not. But we really work hard. We have these goals. We really want to make sure that we connect with people. But our data stinks out loud. So whatever AI, that company, that corporate leader would say, hey, you know what? Somebody over top of HR says, we're going to employ this artificial intelligence methodology and this structure and this tool. And therefore, we're going to apply it to HR as well. Like, well, our data stinks. Well, therefore, that you need to start making it not stink. You need to improve that data set. You need to start asking questions about what is the process for data capture? What are our key systems? What are our key fields? What decisions can we not make today because we don't have data? Well, or what decisions are we making today that are not fueled by data? And that's a big problem. So again, if you're looking down the path and say, well, we're going to implement this AI in 6 months, 3 months, whatever it might be, but today we are just all over the place. We have no cleanliness about data at all. We have no data governance. That's where you need to start engaging with people or companies or whoever it might be, or yourself, upskilling yourself to address that need, because it is really right now, it's an immediate need. If AI is not the expectation today, it'll be the expectation in 3 months and 6 months. But really, it's an expectation today.
And what are your thoughts in terms of if organizations are finding themselves in this situation where they want to start using data-driven insights, but they know they're a long way off the mark? What guidance can you give them in terms of where they go to do this and how they go to do this?
I think before you bring in an outside specialist, and that's eventually what I would say, is start identifying why you're off the mark. How do you know that you're off the mark? What resources do you know that are in your back pocket that you just haven't reached and pulled out yet? So if you can kind of do an inventory of, well, we're not at absolutely nothing. We have some level of data sets. We have somebody that I could share 25% of the time and take them onto this project. So really identifying, going through a self-evaluation process and figuring out where are we right now and where do we want to be. So don't just go out to the market and say, we have this many and help me and I have no idea what I'm doing. Really pull together yourself from an internal perspective and say, all right, what can we do? How can we do something internally before we pay somebody externally to do that very same thing? Because they'll be trying to set their feet and they'll trying to set their expectations as to, all right, what is the problem here? Do that yourselves, I would say initially, but then once you get to a point where, you know what, we've exhausted all of our resources and we're not sure what to do now, that's when you engage with the experts.
And Chris, specifically about this idea of direct sourcing, building out curated talent pools, are there any sort of insights that you could sort of draw to that say, well, these are some of the things you really need to be thinking about. This is the sort of data that you need to be thinking about.
I think that there's a hell of a lot of companies out there that have 5,000 plus employees, 10,000 plus employees that a lot of people haven't heard of before. When you see these companies, you scan LinkedIn, you're doing whatever you're trying to do to find how can you share your skill set. They don't have strong brands. If I've never heard of them, they're not a very, very strong brand.
Right.
However, that's where kind of that hyper specialization, that niche that I've talked about before. There's conferences that all of these companies that you've never heard of go to, right? Yeah. So they can exist, and you can appeal to that subsection of individuals, that subsection of companies that are focused really very much on that area, on that space. And that's where, maybe you want to look into a sponsorship. Maybe you want to look into just joining some kind of a networking group that meets every 2 months, whatever it might be. You start making comments on a live webcast, different things like that can get your name out there. So that's really where I think companies can say, listen, we're not going to be globally recognizable within the next 3 months, but within our niche, we're going to be recognizable because we're going to start doing this, items A through F.
Great stuff. Chris, we're about out of time, so thanks very much for that. We're going to be talking on the 17th of October on the panel to discuss inverting the hiring pyramid. So for now, thanks very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the panel.
Ian, I appreciate it. Looking forward to it as well.